All right, everyone, welcome back to Cheddar's News Wrap. The toy industry is thriving as parents search for ways to keep children occupied during the COVID-19 pandemic. According to data from the NPD Group, U.S. retail sales of toys generated over $25 billion last year, good enough for an increase of 16% from 2019. So will this trend of toy buying continue post-pandemic? Here to discuss is Steve Pasierb, President and CEO of the Toy Association. My friend, thank you so much for taking the time. I don't know if there were very many interviews, if any, we were more excited for than one about the Toy Association. What toy categories did the best and which ones lagged during the COVID lockdown?
You know, what you saw was parents and adults were really willing to spend on their kids. So you saw building sets, things like games and other categories really take off the past year. As the pandemic first hit, you saw arts and crafts really go. So what you saw in 2020 was adults spending on toys, parents spending on toys, spending more, buying quality, buying the higher price points, and really driving that forward. So it was fashion dolls, it was building sets in particular. Lego had a phenomenal year. The things that kept kids engaged at home for a long period of time, got them in the yard playing in many cases, were the things that really did the best.
Before we go on, you've got a great live shot there with what looks like bookshelves. I just want to make sure you got some mean toys over your shoulder there, back there, because it's very well lit.
Lots of toy airplanes and things like that in my life. So that's what I've got behind me, absolutely. And a few member products as well.
Amazing. Well, shout out to Toy Airplanes. So talk to us, what are going to be the strategy? We know the holiday season, as you get close to like October and November, December, obviously those are always going to be big toy months. But what's the thinking here to kind of keep the momentum going now that the calendar has turned to early 2021? How do you see this playing out?
Well, one of the bit of good news was for the first 3 weeks of January, sales were superb. That's a combination of the relief checks hitting homes and also gift card redemptions. Look, we know that when you get to March and April, the comps year to year are going to be a real challenge because people did go out when the pandemic first hit, when the lockdowns occurred. But as long as this continues, as long as there's like a sense of disruption in our lives, you're going to see the trends continue. Now, when we all emerge, let's face it, people have put off vacations, they've put off entertainment, trips to theme parks. Those things are going to come back. But while we saw major retailers, Amazon, Target, Walmart, mass market do extremely well in the last year, a lot of specialty retail, vacation destinations, museum shops have been closed. So they're going to come back. So you're going to see a shift in the market. From our standpoint, we're telling folks it's really important to look at 2021 versus 2020 versus a more normal year of 2019.
Normal. I remember when things used to be normal. How do you anticipate the shopping trend of online shopping specifically to continue? Because 45% of toy shopping took place online compared to 36% from the comparable year before. Do you see that being the trend, especially in mobile? Hey, I mean, everyone's got one of these. It was never easier to buy a toy direct from mobile.
Absolutely. We've trained whole generations of people how to shop online through the pandemic. Grandma, who never was going to go online, people who really preferred to be in store are now very, very comfortable buying and shopping online. So while we saw that number grow, and it was significant, it's up from like 17% of toys in 2017. So the growth is enormous. What we think is about half of toy sales are going to live in the online space eventually. The reason why people always say in the research, I want to go in the store, I want to touch, I want to feel, I want to read the package. So there's an element of that. Another thing we saw in toy sales in the last year is impulse buys were way, way down. So you go to buy the one toy, you walk down the aisle, you grab something else, you get a baseball or something like that. So that in-store experience is still important to consumers, and it's really still very much important to toy sales because e-commerce has not mastered the impulse buy. People go on, buy the item they're looking for, and they depart. They don't load a cart necessarily around things like toys.
When I was a kid, I was lucky enough to have a number of Toys R Us around my area, where I was born and raised in North Jersey. Of course, that's largely a thing of the past. How have you seen that impact of the lack of in-store kind of brick and mortar experience shopping taking a hit? Because that was already a trend that was sort of moving in one direction, Steve, that of course was sort of made worse by the pandemic and stay-at-home orders.
Absolutely. The market share from Toys R Us shifted to Amazon, largely to Target and Walmart. And obviously, Target and Walmart expanded their selections. But there's nothing like having a dedicated big box store. And that's what Toys R Us represented to the field. And the key thing about Toys R Us was they took chances. They could risk on a small company. They could try things into those stores in a way that other mass marketers can't. That's led, in my view, to a lack of innovation in some areas because people can't take the risks or they can't find the customer to take the risks. But again, we see people, they're buying toys in all kind of venues. They're in Kohl's, they're in supermarkets, Wegmans sells toys, on and on and on. So toys are a big part of American life. Parents have voted for the dollars saying, look, this is something we want in our kids' life. We want the quality that engages them. And they're going to buy online and they're still going to want that retail experience. But retail's got to get much more exciting. It's got to get much more experimental. It's got to give play opportunities in store to keep customers coming back. Look at some of the dedicated brands who have their own stores. They're growing really well around the world.
And what's your best sense on how basically the fact that Hollywood has been shuttered, how's that going to impact things? Because you don't really have the new Marvel, toys flying off, necessarily onto the shelves because Marvel films are being paused. Is there a direct correlation or not necessarily?
Absolutely. It hits you in collectibles and it hits you in action figures. And the good news in the past year has been The Mandalorian and The Child has really helped keep the Star Wars franchise alive, and those have done really well. Marvel Universe actually did well in the past year. It was one of NPD's top 5 properties. So there's still that faith there, but there's nothing like a great movie to drive sales. So through the course of the year, those theatrical receipts, a Frozen, a Star Wars, in different categories, things that are young girls, things that go more to the kid adult, as we call them, really do help drive sales. Licensing is about a third of the toy market. So licensed toys are about a third of everything. That actually was flat to slightly declining in the past year for exactly the reasons you identified. There wasn't that blockbuster movie, really outside of some of the things that were in the Netflix, digital, Disney space through streaming, like Mandalorian.
Steve, I'm rapidly running out of time. What's your favorite toy?
My favorite toy are actually things that fly, as you can tell behind me. As a kid, I liked stuff that had action. So cars and airplanes and stuff like that still get me jazzed. Not so much I don't want to build it the right way. I want to break the set apart and build it my way. So Lego's good for that, but I don't want to build what's on the box. I want to build something else.
Yeah, hey, what's on the box is just a suggestion. You could do something way cooler. All right, well, I hope you'll rejoin us to have this conversation as we push forward. Loved having you. Steve Pasierb, President and CEO of the Toy Association. Thanks a lot for taking the time. We got to leave it there. Thank you for being here. Up next here on the show, folks.